We've got loads to talk about today, and I'm sure we'll get into all sorts of different topics. But I'm sure there's one that you're all dying to hear about. And the first thing to say is that we're all good, we're all happy, we're all confident, we're all positive, and if anything, I think a little bit excited. Hi, Vicky. Glad you could join us. I think we're a little bit excited. So there's no two ways about it. Obviously, hang on. Let me just turn the volume down over here. There we go. So obviously, it was just a massive shock. Hi, Jenny. I'm going to assume everyone's watched the last video. I can't imagine anyone that's going to be tuning into this one hasn't. But yeah, so it was a massive shock. And I think that's it, really. Once we kind of got over that and got our heads around that, I think it's exciting, or at least it is for me. My wife's a very different person. She's extremely anxious, very, very, suffers with anxiety about stuff. Hello, us up north. So glad to have so many of you here so early today. It's just, everything's still massively up in the air, which is something for my wife that she's quite kind of, she struggles with. That's a really difficult position for her to be in. She likes to know what's happening and this is happening, and she really needs that kind of security. And that's something that obviously we don't have at the moment, that I can't give her at the moment. That kind of, this is the plan. This is where you're going to be in a week's time. This is where you're going to be in 6 months' time, etc. And that's what she really needs to thrive. But we're managing, we're coping as a family, and it's, generally speaking, I think it's going to be positive. I think we'd kind of made peace with the fact, us up north, gutted for you, hopefully a new opportunity for you all though. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's how we're looking at it as well. So there's a bit of noise going on because my son's in here making his lunch, and my wife's just been mowing the lawn. She's just come in as well. So sorry about the background noise, but it's a house. It's the family home. So what was I going to say? Yeah. So we kind of made peace with the idea quite some time ago, really, if we're honest, that we were probably going to be here for another 2 or 3 years. Then we were going to be moving on, and our lease officially ran for another 2 years from now. And the plan, as I mentioned in that last video, we were probably going to see if we could get an extension for another year or so. Hi, Shannon. Glad you could join us, mate. Which would have given us 3 years. Would have been about right. Now, those of you who have followed me for quite a long time will know. Sorry, Liam P. Rainer writes, "Hi, Carl. Sorry, I'm late. Making butter. You're always so positive. It's an inspiration to us. To always look on the bright side of life." Thank you, Liam. And Mike the Caveman says hi. So hi, Mike. Again, thank you for joining us. So yeah, I mean, like I say, the plan was in sort of 3 years, I think, that we were going to be in a position financially, because we've been working. Obviously, my wife and I both work, and we're really, really frugal, as you will have noticed. Something really has to be worth it for us to spend any money. You could say we're tight. There's lots of different ways of putting it, but we're very, very frugal. That's how we like to phrase it. And, we were in the process of saving up, and the plan was going to be, like I say, in 3 years, we'd be in a position where we could buy somewhere very, very similar to this. Now, realistically, we probably weren't going to be able to afford something like this because of the house. Now, the house here with the property is just, it's extremely valuable. It's extremely expensive, if you like. Cymro 1970, morning, Carl. Glad I can watch this while potting in the garden. So sorry to hear about your landlord. No, please. So everybody, hi Jeff and hi Deb. The one thing I will say is the support from you guys has just been immense. And throughout this thing that I do, throughout sharing the ups and downs here, the support that I get from you guys is just always immense, and it really does fuel me, and it empowers me, and it means so much to me, and I'm so appreciative of it. So thank you for that. Elliot Hughes says, hi, glad you're here, Elliot, and Wild Edibles. Glad Caveman's phone beeped so I don't miss you. Awesome. I've only just joined the dots there, Wild Edible. I didn't know. That's great. The first thing I want to say is thank you for all of your support. It means the world to me, not just at the moment, but always. There's a lot of content that I put out, and I share. I try and be pretty much an open book about my mental state, about how I feel about things, and about the things we do here, even things that I know or that I think probably won't be aligned with what everyone else would think or do. I try and share them because I try and give a really honest appraisal of what we're doing here. And, the feedback I get from you guys is just amazing. And I'm just so blessed and privileged that we found each other. And, I just want to, thank you all for the support. But I also want to say, don't... well wishes is amazing and fantastic, but no one should be feeling sorry for me or us or worrying about us, because we're going to be just fine, and we're in a really positive place. I'm so blessed. I've got such an amazing marriage and relationship with my wife, and I've got 3 amazing children. And of course, no one's perfect and we have ups and downs, but we're in such a good place as a family that, it doesn't really matter what happens. Everything's going to be great. Everything's going to be fantastic. I've got 3 amazing kids doing really well at school, and a healthy family. And it's just, we're going to be fine. Hannah Starrett, hello. So glad you could make it, Hannah. So that's that. I wanted to just get that out of the way and get that across. But the other thing is, for me personally, I'm extremely robust when it comes to stuff like this, when it comes to unexpected stuff happening. And I spent a substantial portion of my late teens and early 20s homeless. And I spent that whole period very, very comfortable with myself and very, very comfortable with life, and knowing that, there was no existential risk to me. And, it helped mold me, my early years, although there's lots of things that I would do differently if the situations arose now. But they definitely molded me into this person that's really, really quite robust. And I'm not, it takes a hell of a lot to really, knock the enthusiasm out of me and knock the desire to, just get on and do things and stuff out of me. And I'm really, really quite comfortable with that. Just a couple of comments. Jeff and Deb Shipton, home is where the heart is, and that is so, so true. And I just pray that all of you guys are, equally in, fantastic places with yourselves and with the people around you. Mark Parnaby, you said about life-giving lemons, you really do make the best lemonade. Well, that's so kind, thank you. And that is the thing. I'm really good at making lemonade, so we're going to be just good. We're going to be just fine. So with that said, everything I'm saying is tempered by this sort of instability and this little bit of unknown. We are walking into the unknown, and while for me I'm really, really comfortable. That's a position I'm just really comfortable living in. For my wife, it's not. So that's something that my wife and I will both need to be aware of, and we need to really make sure that we're communicating really well, which we have been. But for me, it comes with a level of excitement that you don't always get, and it feels like for the first time in a long time we actually feel free again, and it's a really weird feeling. So we, for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure it won't be many of you, but for those of you who don't know, we own a house. We have a little 3-bedroom house that I converted and put a loft conversion in to make it into a 4-bedroom house with a garden. And I don't know how big the garden is. It's probably about 7 or 8 meters wide by maybe 15 to 20 meters long, and then it's got a little tiny driveway at the front. So obviously we, hang on, what's this? Let me just get a few messages read out. So Amy Wood said, just listened to your stacking functions episode and didn't want to miss the live, so putting it into practice. I'm watching in the shower. Hope it's not a two-way camera. And Mike Caveman says, it's a good attitude needed to pass on these days. Well, I'm definitely doing my best to pass it on to my kids. And just for your peace of mind, Amy, Wild Edible says she can't see you from where she is. Elliot says, when life takes away your lemons, make a rhubarb reduction. Oh, that's got to be the comment of the day, Elliot. That's fantastic. Oh, that needs to get put on a t-shirt. When life takes away your lemons, make a rhubarb reduction. I'm going to get that on a t-shirt. So what an in-joke. Oh, that's really cheered me up. So yeah, well, I can't remember where I was. So yeah, we've got a house. We own a house, but my brother-in-law, my sister live in it with their 2 young children. And getting, deep into my sort of backstory, about 4 years ago, give or take, before we moved here, I built a very, I would say, successful and a big business, a building company. And I built several companies actually, and I had this business model. I was trying to basically, I had a building company, and then I started tacking on other companies, separate companies, a fencing company, a roofing company, a flooring and tiling company, a plastering company. And each of these companies, I put a separate director in. I was going to be the next Bill Gates. I had this master plan where I would put these separate directors in charge of these separate entities, and they would have a 50% stake in them, and then they would run them, and then I would own 50% of this company that after I'd got it up and running, I wouldn't need to work on. And it was going to be great. That was going to be the rest of my life. I was going to, live the rest of my life wearing a suit, just going to board meetings and, taking a really good income. Anyway, without getting too much into the details, a couple of the directors that I put in place turned out to be bad choices. And effectively, there was a tremendous amount of debt created that I had unwittingly underwritten. Long story short, it meant that all of the businesses basically had to go into liquidation. And that was about 2 years ago. And because I personally underwritten a lot of that debt, it meant that I was tied to it as well, which caused a personal bankruptcy. And of course, then the house, luckily, most of the ownership of that was in my wife's name. I'm just recording a live stream, love, so if you could try and keep the noise down. Thank you, love. So yeah, anyway, so without getting too much into the weeds and all of that, basically what it means is that financially we've really been in limbo for a little while, and that's just now getting resolved. And one of the upshoots of it is that basically, although there's quite a substantial amount of equity in the property, it's not immediately available. It will be in a month or two. Are you after something, my darling? No? It's just got a house. I've got a kitchen full of people. I've never seen so many of my children at this end of the house, but they're all here right now. So it just means that stage of limbo that we're in right now is going to be a little bit longer than we might have liked, because we can't necessarily do some of the things that, some of the things that are on the table insofar as choices and medium and long-term choices, they're not necessarily things we can instantly act on. So that's just getting you guys a little bit caught up on kind of where we are. But so some of the things that we've looked at, I think it was Sam Tancock who sent me a message on YouTube, and if it wasn't, please correct me, with a link to, there's basically like this organization that buys plots, fields basically, separates them into plots, and then helps you get planning permission for your house with an agricultural tie, etc., etc., etc. And that's a really exciting idea, and I've sent them an email and I've applied because they've got a plot really near here. And so that's something we're definitely looking at. There's a few downsides. Firstly, you don't get to ever own it. You do have to buy it which costs about 100 grand, but you can do that over several years. You have to buy this piece of land. But so there's like so many different things that are at play here. So one of the things is you get to buy the land, 150 grand, but you only buy it leasehold. You buy a 150-year lease, which means you never actually own it. You never own the freehold. And it means that this company, this non-profit company, which are amazing, and they're helping people get into agriculture, but they have certain ties that they put on the property that cannot be changed. So my long-term vision was always to have like a teaching center and do lots of teaching and courses and stuff. Well, you know, one of the things that they assert that you have to actually make your income from agriculture, literally selling things that you grow. It can be, you know, you can diversify from that, so it doesn't have to be growing vegetables. It could be, you know, I could make a charcuterie and raise pigs and sell salamis and porks and prosciutto hams and things like that. But it does mean that has to be the bulk of your income. And so that's one thing that kind of puts me off that a little bit, coupled with the fact that it's a leasehold. But that's still an option. Another option is just to buy a piece of land. Now, obviously, in an ideal world, we've set our minds on 2 acres as a minimum. And we could buy a piece of land just like that, but it wouldn't have a house on it necessarily. So, you know, we're thinking, again, we'd have to free up some of the equity in the property to do that. Juggling the two things. Basically, we need somewhere to live, but we also need the land. And how we get there, we're not sure yet, because buying a house that's suitable for my family to live in, and it doesn't have to be nearly as grand and beautiful as this one, but just that is suitable for my family to live in with a 2-acre garden, we couldn't buy a piece of land like that simply with the equity in our property by selling that property and taking the money and buying the land. So we would need to get a mortgage on it. There are obviously complications due to credit scores and things like that around that, but that's one option. Another option is we just buy a piece of land and then we go down the route of trying to get our own temporary planning permission and then permanent planning permission with an agricultural tie. And then eventually we have it and it's ours, and it doesn't have to be necessarily growing food and things as our main source of income on it, because we're the freeholders. And then the third option is that we just rent somewhere. We find somewhere we can rent similar to this, obviously not quite as big as this because we wouldn't be able to afford it. And you know, that's another option. There's several reasons that I don't really want to get into why, if we can leave our house that we own for a couple of years before we sell it, that would be perfect. And all of this stuff I will share with you guys, but a bit further down the line. There's sort of personal reasons why I can't do that right now, and I apologize for that. I do try and be an open book, but there's some things I just can't really talk about. Amy Woods writes, your positivity in the face of all that is outstanding. Thank you. It's in my nature. I can't help it. So yeah, here's the thing, you know, it's great to be this positive, but you know, you've got to be scared to be brave. If you're not ever scared of something, then you're not brave. So I'm not being brave about it because it's not something that fears me. Does that make sense? And then Alan from the Urban Homesteading UK podcast, which you must check out if you haven't already, if you're not already subscribed. Time to start up the Self-Sufficient Hub commune, a true hub. The thought has crossed my mind, Alan. Hannah says she's up for it. And Liam can't sing, so no campfires for him. Yeah, so, you know, those are the options, but I have to say it's exciting. And there's, you know, there's a couple of, you know, everything in between is still on the table. There's nothing off the table at the moment. So we've spent the last 48 hours really just looking at properties and looking at land and seeing what's available. Now, so another idea is if we could buy a house with a garden, with a field at the back, and then we could also speak to the farmer and maybe buy a corner of that field or rent it, then that would also be an ideal situation. And that might be the one we end up going down because it might be the easiest, because we could literally buy the house, move into it, and we're talking about a house that really needs a lot of work, because that's another, you know, I keep on about how we're fortunate, and one of the huge advantages we've got is my skill set. I can take a house that's literally falling down and I can do all the work on it myself. Equally, I can build a house from scratch. So, you know, there's loads of things that we have working for us that are in our favor. And, you know, the other thing to keep perspective on, I suppose, is that we're still here. And sometimes it can be very, very easy for people to, and it's conversations like this I have with my wife all the time. It's very, very easy for people to worry about things that are happening, worry about the future, and let that steal the present from you. And you can spend, you know, you can spend an entire day and evening worried about the following day and not enjoy that day and evening. And we're in that position, but on a much bigger scale. You know, it would be very easy for us to spend the next year doing nothing but, you know, focusing and kind of fetishizing this thing that we're trying to get to, and not enjoy the year that we're going to have here, because we've got another year here which is going to be amazing with this amazing garden and this amazing house. And it's really important that we, you know, make the most of that time as well, because all we have are a series of present moments. That's all we have, and we waste them at our peril. And, you know, I'm certainly not going to be doing that. And the other thing, you know, if anyone was wondering, I'm sure they're not, because I've kind of already said it, but, you know, if anyone's wondering about the future of this channel, then I think, honestly, I think it's quite exciting. I think the channel could be quite exciting as we all go on a journey looking for a new piece of land and building it from scratch. And the things I've learned, oh my goodness, I'm in such a better position now to do things right the first time. And, you know, the number of times I've mentioned, both here and on the podcast, that we've got all these formal gardens around the house that we don't want, and they're a tax for living here. The maintenance of them is something we just have to do, and we don't want them. And, you know, we're not going to have that in future. So there's so many positives to come out of it. Got a few comments here to read. Shannon Ward says, move to Australia and we'll buy land together. I think you might melt though. And Cumro 1970, have you looked at the Llamas project in Yorkshire? I think you buy a small block of land. The Welsh government give you planning permission for an eco house if you can prove that you can make a living from your land. You know what? I have actually heard of that project. So one of the huge things for us as a family, one of the massive constraints on what we can do, is that we have to stay local. So my wife really doesn't want to, and my children don't want to, move the children from a school. So we have to stay local, and also she wants to stay near her parents. So, you know, that's something we've discussed, and it's a decision that's kind of, it's been made, and it's binary. You know, there's no shades of grey here, and we're not going to reapproach that position. That's, you know, that's just a fact that we've accepted. And so that unfortunately, it does place a massive premium on all of the land and all of the property that is available to us, because it's a really, really expensive area. Really expensive area. I think outside of London and the southeast, it's probably the most expensive area in the country. So it's, you know, it places a huge covenant on our choices. But, you know, that's just where we are. And yeah. Amy Woods, that is exciting for the channel, since I imagine a lot of us have those kind of dreams of buying land. Yeah. And does the English government do a similar project? No, not that I'm aware of, Cumro, no, not at all. Liam, there's also the Land Cooperative that has a site in Sparford. That's the one I've applied for, Liam, actually. And that's the one that, like I say, you get a leasehold, not a freehold, and it does have an agricultural tie, and they have covenants that they kind of put on your ownership of the lease. So there's quite a lot of things that you're beholden to if you're entering into that arrangement. That's not to say it's off the table. We've applied and we're going to go through the application process and see what it looks like and find out a lot more about it. And if nothing else, I'll be able to share that experience with you guys. Jeff and Deb Shipton write, it's going to be an incredible journey to follow, more exciting than not. Absolutely. And Hannah says, I feel that. Would love to move back home, but Yorkshire is affordable for us. Completely understand that as well, Hannah. And you know, in another world, I think it would make our decisions a lot easier if we didn't have these constraints, but we do, and there's no point second guessing it. And as you'll probably know about me already, I don't have a rear view mirror, so I don't spend any of my life worrying about what could have been, worrying about things we might have done. I don't have any regrets because I know that in the moment I'm making the best decisions available to me. And you know, you could spend your whole life, just like you can waste your presence worrying about your future, you can also waste your presence second guessing the past. And I'm just very lucky insofar as I'm not plagued by that. I'm very, very lucky, and meditation helps. I've mentioned it a few times. If you've never, ever, ever taken part in any kind of mindfulness or meditation, then please do give it a go. You might be amazed by the effects. It's a fantastic tool for your well-being, and certainly helps me and helps with my general happiness. And I've suffered in the past with bouts of depression and things, and it helps me to just manage my mood. It's a fantastic tool. Shannon writes, I think you need a brief few words in your channel description. Crazy hair, low outputs, positive thoughts. Yeah, maybe. Although I have to say, I made a little bit of an effort today with my hair. Hopefully it doesn't look too crazy today, because I made more of an effort today than I do most days. So yeah, that's where we are. I'm determined to carry on enjoying what we're doing here, to really use this next few months to experiment with a few things, and just to carry on sharing what we're doing here. It's not going to have a detrimental impact on the channel. It's not going to have a detrimental impact on my happiness or anything else. Cumro writes, when you find somewhere new to set back up, I for one would like to volunteer to help you in the garden or with animals free of charge. I'm new to this, so my payment would be the experience. Wow, what a lovely thought. Well, I was thinking of doing like some kind of get together at some point, maybe next summer before we leave here. I was thinking of having some kind of barbecue or something. So we'll stay in touch, obviously through this channel. But thank you for your kind offer. That sounds amazing. One of the things that's really top of mind and is a concern is the goats, because there's a realistic chance that we're going to get to a position where there's no continuity of land. We might end up in a space where all we have is a garden for a period of time. And if that's the case, then obviously that's going to have an impact on what we can or can't do with regards to animals. So there might be a period where we're goatless. Now, there's no long-term future where I'm goatless. There's no long-term future. But there might be a period for, a short amount of time that we are. So that's just something I'm acutely aware of, and we're going to have to manage that process. But when it comes to self-sufficiency and all the things that I'm passionate about, there's no reason, as Alan and Mike constantly, encourage people in their podcast, but also as people like Vicky, who's come on the podcast, and people like Julie Ellaby, who've come on the podcast, and loads of you demonstrate every day, you can be homesteading with a much smaller space than we have. And I'm always preaching that as well. So, even if we only end up with a garden, then we're still going to be able to carry on our homesteading journey and our learning. And there might be a little shift at some point where I'm shifting the things that I'm focusing on and learning about. Perhaps I'll be more kitchen oriented for 6 months or so, But we're still going to be growing our own food, and we're still going to be partaking in this whole journey, and the steps that are taking towards self-sufficiency, they're still going to be happening. Liam has just written that he'd rehome Supersid and return him when we have space, and that is a lovely offer, Liam. Thank you so much, and may well ask you to do that. We'll see, but we'll see where we are. There's more up in the air at the moment than there is decided. So it's not like I'm able to say this is the plan going forward, but there's so much positive to take from it. And again, we've had this amazing experience here, and I sit before you today a completely different person than I was just 3 years ago. It was only last month, 3 years ago last month, we moved into this property, and we were given this amazing opportunity, and that's still what we were given. And that changed me profoundly. It changed who I am. It connected me with the idea of growing food. It connected me with the idea of where our food comes from. And it connected me with regenerative agriculture and permaculture. And it connected me with you guys. And it connected me with the idea of self-sufficiency and sustainability. Because up until then, I was just a completely different person. I was just a builder. And I don't say just a builder, like being a builder can't be an amazing thing, a fulfilling vocation. But for me, it wasn't. For me, it was just a descriptor. And it was pretty much my only descriptor. I enjoyed cooking. I did other things, but not a lot. And I've exchanged so many hobbies that were really unfulfilling for this one all-consuming, powerful one that created a life's journey for me that I'm now on. And I will be forever grateful in my heart for this opportunity and for what it's done to me and how it's changed me. And it's made me a better person. It's made me a less coarse person, a more nuanced person, but also one who's not so sure that he's always got all the answers. And I'm working with plants and animals has just been the best thing for my mental health and the best thing, I think, for my physical health as well. And it's given me this direction. It's given me a compass by which I can now chart the course of the rest of my life and do so with a smile on my face. So Jeff and Deb Shipton, right. So true, do what you can with what you have, and that's always good enough. Again, I love that sentence. Do what you can with what you have, and that's always enough. And hard things come before good things. So there's going to be some hard things in the future, that's for sure, because we're going to go from, one thing I am certain of, we're going to go from somewhere where we've got all these things established, and we're going to have to start from scratch again. I'm going to be giving up my asparagus bed. We're only going to be able to harvest it for 2 years. And then one of the saddest things is I'm fairly confident I know what's happening here, that's, it's not going to be appreciated. A lot of the fruit trees and things that I've planted here, I'm not sure they're going to be appreciated. So, we've got lots of decisions to make there. I don't know if can you transplant asparagus? I mean, just thinking is so another area that for me is exciting, but for my wife is just really anxiety inducing, is the idea of actually moving everything. And, we're almost certain, we're certainly going to be downsizing house-wise, fitting everything in. But, we've got 2 chicken trailers to move. We've got, all of the animal housing and equipment to move. And that's before we even start thinking about plants. And again, some of our fruit trees and things, do we ever even consider that and what have you? Vicky, hugs to Jackie. Thank you, Vicky. I'll pass them on. I'm not sure if she's watching, but yeah, I'll pass them on for you. So, and that's, there's going to be ups and downs emotionally for my family. But luckily, I'm pretty robust and capable of riding them. These aren't things that are bad for me. They're fine for me. I'm good with them. DSRIT training afternoon. Hope you can find somewhere suitable. Thank you so much. And that's the plan. Yeah, so we've looked at already. We've been, and I've given my details and what we're looking for to all of the estate agents in our local town. I've got a few others to go and visit. We've been looking online. There are lots and lots of auctions, but yeah, it's a process of fact finding at the moment. We've been and visited a field that's being turned into one of these plots that I mentioned earlier. There's lots and lots of options. So what we're in at the moment is kind of a fact finding and seeing where we sit stage. And then after that, probably it won't be for a month or so. We'll be starting to finalize our decision making process and what we're really looking at, So Jeff and Deb Shipton tried digging up the asparagus, some at least, and putting it in pots at the end of this season. We're growing some in pots until we move. Worth a try. Yeah, it really is, actually. I did go through that thought process already of just getting loads of massive pots, and this autumn just potting up loads of the perennials ready to move. I did think about doing that. And big hugs to Jackie from you guys as well. Amy Woods writes, Liz Zorab has just upped and moved everything from Buy the Farm if you want some inspiration. Yeah, no, I've seen that. I have seen that. I'm not sure. I haven't followed it. So I've seen that it's a thing. I'm aware of it in the YouTube universe, but it's not something I've followed. I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of YouTube. I just don't have the time. I tend to, if I'm watching YouTube, it's something specific. I'm looking to learn a specific thing or what have you. I don't tend to have the time. My wife watches a fair amount of YouTube. But yeah, so there's loads, there's more undetermined things and undecided things than there are decided things. But like I say, the main purpose of this video was to really help you guys understand where we are mentally, understand where we are financially and what our kind of ideas are. And then, just reassure you that we're good, I'm good and we're going to be good. And, the channel's going to carry on. Although I have to say, I haven't done, what day is it? It's Sunday at noon now is when they started. And I have to say, I haven't done anything in the garden since Friday. I've just been lazy. And that's the first time in years I can say that. And it's not that I'm unmotivated. So don't worry about that. It's not that I've lost my passion for it all of a sudden. I just wanted to be lazy for a day. I just wanted to take a day and not be right in it, if that makes sense. Not be, in the midst of it all. And so I've done that now and I feel good. I feel like I'm ready and I'm going to have a fairly relaxed rest of today as well. But I am going to do some harvesting. I've got an amazing amount of French beans. Those little dwarf French beans are just incredible producers. And Vicky Pineby writes, thinking uses up a lot of energy. Yeah, agreed. Shannon says, Carl, I'm sure there's some weeding to be done when you're done being lazy. It's okay to take a break though. Yeah, I'm actually pretty good with my weeding. I keep planning on doing it and then not getting around to doing it, filming the garden tour, but I'm pretty good. I think I've done almost all of it. There's like 2 or 3 tiny little patches in the vegetable bed that have still got a few weeds in, but they're like in amongst my onions. And I know that I'm harvesting my onions very, very soon. So my plan is to just rip them out when I come through doing that. So the bed's looking pretty good, I have to say. I'm really quite happy with it. And it's like I say, it's not that I'm unmotivated. I've just been tired, and not even tired. I just wanted to take a day. And that's what I did. And that's okay. And you can all do that too. You need to give yourself permission sometimes. DSR IT training, it's hard investing when you know you are moving. Concentrate on what you can take with you. Positive thinking and attract the right property to you, I'm sure. Norwich. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And that's, you know, we're all about that. So it's not that, so obviously what it does do is it changes the sort of things that I'm now going to focus on. You know, the idea of completing the ponds is something we're definitely not going to do. The idea of introducing a load of turkeys into the wood now is probably not going to happen. We may get a handful for just to rear and slaughter, but we're certainly not going to be introducing any more animals now because it would just be irresponsible. So as you know, we've got chickens of all sorts of ages out there. As they kind of Shannon Waters, I'm sad about the no army of turkeys. Yeah, well, it will happen. It just won't happen here. We just all need to be a little bit more patient. But yeah, so we've got our laying hens. We've got them of all ages, and a lot of them are ex-battery hens. And the deal is, when I buy an ex-battery hen, when I bring an ex-battery hen home, is they're here until they pass away, because they've served their time. They've done a hell of a job, and they deserve a happy retirement. To try and balance it out, you know, we want to balance out the. We want them to have as happy a life, looking at it as a net total as we possibly can. So, you know, all of our hens, realistically, the laying hens, they're here as a retirement as well. So, but what will happen is, as they pass away, which they do, we certainly won't be replacing them. We'll allow our stocks to kind of dwindle down, and we probably lose between 10 and 15 a year. So we'll probably have about 15 less this time next year, and that'll still give us, we'll still have over 100 birds here, I think. But, you know, we'll start to just allowing things to dwindle stock-wise. Of course, the goats, and they're all young animals, so they're still going to be here, and we may be looking to rehome them in time if it comes about that we can't bring them with us, which obviously is plan A. And then obviously rhubarb. Now I need to speak to my brother-in-law, my other brother-in-law, Jackie's brother, who lives on a homestead, and see if he can, you know, as a backstop, if he can maybe look after rhubarb. And chicken math will pick back up eventually, I'm sure, exponentially, I predict. Shannon writes. And yeah, there is no antidote to chicken math. So, you know, it's just how it goes. You don't need to worry about letting chicken math happen. It happens on its own. I mean, even now we've got chicks hatching left and right. So, but yeah, so we'll probably sell a lot of our Brahmas, you know, maybe a few more than we might have, because whenever we move, just the thought process put behind moving, it would be slightly easier if we're moving a few less animals. So, you know, putting some animals in the sale would be a sensible idea, I think, although I have, you know, this is just coming to me now. All these things are things that my wife and I will discuss and determine between us. But, you know, just the thought of moving things. But what I was saying, it just changes the sort of things I'll do here. So, you know, I will probably spend some time over the next 6 months collecting loads and loads of big containers so that we can start moving things into containers. We will probably start to just think about things with a shorter term view. So, you know, next year in March, we won't be sowing any long season crops. We haven't really got a fixed date of when we're going to leave, because the other thing is, you know, we can leave tomorrow. If the right thing happens to present itself to us, then we can leave tomorrow. So it's really difficult to know at this point exactly what the next year is going to look like, and it's difficult to plan. When you're growing, you're thinking at least 6 months ahead all the time. So there's an element of just easing off the gas on some of those things, and, you know, we might just be focusing more on faster growing crops and things like that. I think, you know, do we grow sweet corn next year? I don't know. These are all things that we're going to need to address in time, but we don't, you know, at the moment all we have are questions. not answers. I think strictly speaking, the deadline would be September of next year. But I think that would be pushing it. We'll just see how it goes. Anyway, I don't really have much else to say on the topic, but hopefully I've left you guys feeling that, you know, we're all good and there's nothing to worry about here. And hopefully you guys are all doing well in your own personal circumstances and are looking to a bright future as well. So that's going to wrap us up, I think. Like I say, I've covered everything that I wanted to discuss today. Unless there's any last minute questions, then I think we'll knock it on the head. So as always, before you do go though, guys, can you make sure you press that like button for me? Makes a difference to the video and the channel. And yeah, I think that's about it. So I will speak to you guys really soon. Thanks ever so much for watching, and catch you on the next one. Cheers.